Hello, party people. So, something I watched today, I thought it was very interesting because it reminded me of my own personal experience with something very similar yet very different as well. Um, so Finster, right? I know I've been talking about him a lot, but uh, something he said during one of his streams, it really made me think about some stuff in the recent years, up until today, as well as I'm sure to the future, whatever happens in the future. That is, for well, okay, let me put it this way. Fincher was looking at his stream, right, and the camera was pointed at him when he was or is dressed as a female, and it was almost like he was looking into a mirror, looking at his OBS, and he said for a split second he thought he was looking at a female. Can you imagine that? A cis, born a man, wants to stay a man, confused his appearance as the opposite gender. So you might be wondering, what does that have to do with me? Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm not confusing myself with the opposite gender. No, it's serious. This is supposed to be a serious recording right here. This is serious right now. I gotta get serious. Okay. So I know everyone's tired of talking about the pandemic, and a bunch of us would just like to forget it ever happened or just bury it away somewhere. I don't think that's a good idea, but whatever. Whatever gets you through the work week and the events of the world. I remember before the pandemic started, I had a similar moment. Yeah, very different. I was looking in the mirror one day, and I don't know, maybe this is just the way I grew up and the people I grew up around. Again, for like a split second, I didn't see someone who was a different race than everyone else. I'm not saying I saw someone different. As cheesy as this is gonna sound, I saw someone, despite whatever appearance differences there might be, I saw someone who felt like they belonged here, that this was their home. Not my parents' house, of course, but the city, the place that I moved to when I was, I don't know, somewhere around 13. And at the time, Bridgeport was all I knew. For those that don't know, Bridgeport is not exactly Stamford or Greenwich, Connecticut. It's not exactly like those places. It's gotten better, but it's still not close to those places. And I don't know how to describe it. It was a really weird feeling. And things were getting better. I was sort of having some, maybe one or two hospital issues, incidents, but I got through them, and I thought to myself that at least I have a home to go back to when I'm not there anymore, when I'm out of there, when I'm discharged. And it was just, things were getting better. I was working again. I was working on his YouTube channel. I was working on my books. It didn't seem like things were going to change for the worse. And I'm trying not to be pessimistic about that, but the reality of the situation is things did change for the worse. I wish I hadn't, but like back then I was going places by myself. I had finally learned to walk somewhere and not look over my shoulder. I learned that I just felt safe. And honestly, as from my teenage years to an adult, there were only small instances where I felt that way. But as time went on before the pandemic, I think you know what this is what I'm getting to here. I felt like I belonged there. I felt like I established myself there. Like people knew who I was, people knew who I wasn't. And I would like to think the people I interacted with felt like I just kept it real. I was keeping it real. Like I wasn't a fake person. And even if I was a fake person, I'm not very good at acting. Despite what you might see here, I'm not very good at acting. I can't memorize my lines. I can't do it. So here comes that moment. I remember at work a week before quarantine started, my coworkers and I were talking about what we thought about this impending virus that was all over the news. Obviously, like the rest of the world, none of us thought it would come to in some areas, a forced quarantine. And not everyone was taking it seriously before the quarantine started. But when the quarantine started, we didn't really know if there was going to be a place for us to go back to when things calm down, like a place to work. But maybe that's what the unemployment boost was for. Did everybody qualify for it that worked at the clinic I work at? Not everyone. Some people were, obviously not, I should say some people, a lot of people were, the majority of people were working from home. I didn't have that luxury. So I had to collect the unemployment boost. So I read an article about someone I went to high school with who threatened to run over a pedestrian who appeared to be East Asian, and some maybe not racist but definitely threatening threats were made concerning the pedestrian's appearance, concerning the pedestrian's safety, and I noticed in the article it never actually verifies what country the pedestrian was from, but he was assumed, obviously, because people do this, and it's not just people who are not minorities, it's not just people who are minorities. We do it as a society, and it was assumed he was Chinese. Now if you know what my ethnic background is, then I'm very surprised, because I don't share it often, and it's not just an umbrella term, just to let you know. But can you make the argument that all East Asian people came from Canton, or at least one of the ancient cities of China? Because China has in East Asia the oldest records, the oldest whatever fossils, blah blah blah, I don't know the shit. The earliest recorded history was in China. So you can argue that Japanese people, Korean people, Filipino people, they all came from China at some point. Obviously, not all of them stayed there because other countries formed, other languages, other races, other ethnicities. Now, when I heard about that, I read the article. It's not that I didn't feel safe anymore, although that was a large part of it. I didn't hear a lot of people saying, that's terrible. That's not right. That's unfortunate. I'm sure there were some people who voiced that. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure people had opinions that they kept to themselves. I'm sure there's people out there who thought and maybe expressed out loud that this person was doing a good thing. That they were sorry about that. That they were letting people know that what that driver did was right. And whether they admitted it or not, that's how they probably felt. And when I thought about that, I was like, when did that become okay? When did that become a normal, acceptable thing to do? So in the meantime, now I'm back to looking over my shoulder. I'm back to not going places by myself. Like, do you know how many times in the past before the pandemic when I just went to a bar by myself, just had a drink, watch some basketball or something? Now, how often do you think I do that now? And it's not out of fear, although that is a large part of it. It's that whatever happens out there, I don't want to bring it back here in this household. And to an extent, I realize that's impossible. But if this is what I have to do to maintain a semblance of security, we don't have a fucking security system. We don't have ADT. And it's just like, should I be worried about cars that are driving in my direction now? Like, I know I wasn't thinking about this as hard as when it happened, but I still think about it even though the world is the way it is now. And quite frankly, I typically don't talk about politics here and, you know, the world affairs, but if you guys think World War III is so far-fetched, I mean, we didn't think the pandemic was happening either, right? And a lot of us were wrong about that. Can a lot of us be wrong about World War III? Of course. Now, I'm not saying I believe it could happen or I don't believe it could happen. I'm saying it's a possibility. And if we've learned anything from this pandemic, it's sometimes the unlikely situations become likely and do happen. Now, back to what I was saying though, like, I make sure my car's locked. I make sure, you know, there aren't any sketchy people around. If it was appropriate, I would carry some weapon with me, but that's going to turn out well, isn't it? We all know how well it turns out when minorities have weapons around, huh? Especially on their person. We know how well that turns out, right? You know, I can laugh about it, but it's true. That's like, if you think like 10-year-olds, 13-year-olds, obviously teenagers, but even younger than that, if you think violence didn't happen back then and it does happen now, you guys were not paying attention to the news in Bridgeport. You guys were not watching the Channel 12 Bridgeport News or whatever the fuck it was. Because that shit's been going on a long time. And the only difference is it's not knives anymore. It's assault rifles. It's fucking trench coats, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And my only question is this: why and when did it become okay for these things to happen? I look at the people I know locally, or used to know, who were local to Milford, Connecticut. And I don't really know what to say to them, because I look at them when they were local. It's a different city. It's a different world we live in now. And let me put it this way: I don't exactly have my homies, my boys. They're not there anymore. They're not backing me up. Because if I had them, and there were like 10 of us, a lot of the shit would be different. Let's just say, hypothetically, minorities would not be getting jumped, and that would not be an acceptable thing to do. And I'm not saying I was part of a gang or something, but I knew people who did a lot worse things than other people can imagine. More sheltered people. There were a lot of other things, like drugs. Like, we're not talking about like back then marijuana was kind of a big deal, kind of taboo. But I'm talking about when I was in Bridgeport, when I was growing up. Like, if you wanted to make money, you would do stuff with cocaine in terms of buying and selling. Like, marijuana, people don't understand. Marijuana is that's like nickels and dimes, man. Come on. And that's like a side hustle. That's not a job. That's not an organization. It's not organized crime. Especially nowadays, when, for the most part, I guess it's been legalized. Whether you need a prescription or not, I have no fucking idea. It just makes me really sad that I'm not confident in my personal safety anymore. I'm not confident in the safety of anyone who might follow me back to this household. And you might think I'm exaggerating or making a big deal out of nothing. If you could walk in my shoes, then I will let you. Because you're going to notice that people look at you differently. People look at you and be like, I'm not saying I can read their minds or I know what they're thinking, but the eyes tell a lot sometimes. The glances, the moving to the edge of the street where you're walking, and like back, even when things were getting better before the pandemic, even then I still got the occasional racial slur, like if I was at a bar and there's some drunk asshole. But people knew that was wrong back then. They just didn't do anything about it. I didn't do anything about it. Like, what the fuck am I gonna do about it? Is he gonna get arrested for saying something he shouldn't be saying to other people? And post-pandemic, if you want to call it, is that even a word? Did I just make up a new term? Post-pandemic, someone could say racial slur, and now it seems like not everyone is saying that that's wrong. Some people are saying that's okay, and that really bothers me. Regardless of who was threatening whoever pedestrian, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it, right? But I'll just say this right up front and now. How do I know I'm not going to be that next pedestrian? You think I'm way off base here? You think I'm being unrealistic? Okay. Alright. But again, like I said, walk in my shoes and you tell me there aren't any differences. Unfortunately, that's not possible. But I mean, I don't know, man. Just, I wouldn't say I've become a total hermit, but sometimes I just don't even want to be anywhere at night or anywhere by myself. And I mean, in a sense, you can say if you keep acting and thinking that way, then the other bad people, they got what they wanted. They got to you. They got inside your head. They're renting space in your head right now. I mean, if I was an organized protester or something, that'd be great. But what it boils down to is, honestly, sometimes I just want to be left alone. Honestly, sometimes this fucking computer, this fucking digital camera, this Yeti right here, this microphone, that's the only shit I need. Unfortunately, it's a very solitary life. Alright guys, I really shouldn't be talking about what I've been talking about, but I need another video for the 22nd of February. It's been like 2 days technically. Alright guys, thanks for watching. It's just not right, and I wish more people saw that. Take care of yourselves and each other.